Memorial Trust, which is my main presidential charity this year. This is not a fundraising evening tonight. I know you'll be really disappointed about that. Instead, I would like to thank you for your generosity so far with contributions in support of my loop ride in 2019. More donations when I gave my talk to you all in January or February this year, whenever it was. And of course, the ones that you've made during my presidential year to date. I know from Rick that they're very much appreciated. There will be further opportunities to donate, notably in our Christmas appeal at Ladies and Clergy night in January, and by participating in our proposed online raffle.
I could see her outside the door.
Neil, can you put everybody on mute?
Is that a bonbon to me?
So that we're also participating in our proposed online raffle at the Treasurer's Night once we work out how we can do an online raffle, which is not trivial apparently. But tonight it's all about hearing from Rick and understanding more about this wonderful and much needed charity. Thanks, Rick. Over to you.
Well, good evening, everybody. And firstly, thank you very much for asking me along this evening. As you know, Charles has been a great supporter of the Loop and the William Wates Memorial Trust. And actually, we're very honoured to be nominated as your Presidential Charity of the Year for 2020. Charles tells me that you've raised £660 plus gift aid to date, which goes on top of the phenomenal amount Charles raised on our cycling event, the Loop. 2020 has been a very difficult year for the charity sector, so to have support like this is a great boost for us, and we really are very, very grateful for it, so thank you very much. I'm aware also that Charles has already spoken to you in the past about our cycling event, the Loop, and the William Wates Memorial Trust, so I've had to think a little bit more deeply about the content of my talk tonight. On that basis, I'll be splitting my talk into two distinct halves. In the first half, I'd like to talk to you about the origins of the William Wates Memorial Trust and how this has impacted the way that we work. And after that, I'm going to talk more generally about the impact of COVID-19 on the charity sector and how we've reacted specifically to this huge challenge. So to start with then, I'd like to tell you about Will, my youngest brother, in whose memory the William Wates Memorial Trust was set up. My intention here is to help you gain an understanding of our motivations in setting up the charity and how important that is for the way that we operate. By understanding this, I hope that you will feel that all the money that you've raised for the Trust will be well spent. Will grew up in a big family. He was the youngest of 5 brothers and also the youngest of 19 Wates grandchildren. We were taught from a young age about the importance of family. Our family motto is out of unity comes strength, and we practice what we preach. Every Sunday, 29 family members would congregate at my grandparents' house for pre-lunch drinks. And at Christmas every year, 90 direct descendants of my grandparents still gather for a family lunch. We have a family business, and in so many ways, family is at the heart of everything we do. As you can imagine, it was difficult for Will to get noticed. Indeed, it was difficult for any of us to get noticed. He had 4 boisterous brothers and 14 cousins, all older than him, jostling for airspace. He was loved by everyone, but he hadn't made his mark. At 19 years old, Will secured a spot at university and decided to take a gap year. He worked on a reforestation project in Ecuador before traveling north to Central America, ending up in Honduras 2 weeks before he was due home. Very sadly, he never made it back. He was mugged and killed in Honduras on August the 15th, 1996. For my family, this was devastating for so many reasons. None of us realized until it was too late how important he was for our family dynamic. He was understated in a very male environment. His love was unconditional. He was full of enthusiasm, friendship, and kindness. His qualities gave the family balance, and we struggled without him. Perhaps what we felt most keenly was his unfulfilled potential. He was on the cusp of making his own mark in life, and his future was bright. To have that cut short felt tragic. In short, we had a very hard 2 years, We struggled through the grieving process, and when we finally reached the acceptance stage, we began to think about his legacy. In 1998, my father set up the William Wates Memorial Trust to be a celebration of Will's life. Everything that we must do reflects his values of unconditional love, kindness, and enthusiasm. We were very conscious that Will was fortunate to grow up in a loving, stable, and financially secure family. Our first aim was therefore to shine some light into the lives of those who did not have the advantages that Will had. Specifically, we decided to target those young people who were the most disadvantaged and the hardest to reach. Our aim was to help young people between the ages of 5 and 19. 5-year-olds because that is prevention, and 19-year-olds because it's never too late for change, and every age in between. By the most disadvantaged and hardest to reach, we mean young people who are on the margins of society. More often than not, the young people we target are living in poverty. Their family lives are volatile and unstable. They have no positive role models in their life, have struggled at school, and are at serious risk of falling into criminality. Their lives are unimaginably hard and hectic, and they trust no one. Importantly for us, we wanted our young people to fulfill their potential. Will never got that chance because of what happened to him in Honduras. The young people we support don't get that chance because they're growing up in poverty and their lives are too hectic. We want the young people we support to trust, engage, and learn the skills that can give them a brighter future. We offer them a chance and hope for their future. By helping young people to fulfill their potential, we're keeping them away from a life of crime. The stories you hear in the press about gangs, postcode wars, and violence are the everyday reality for young people living in our estates across the country. There were 40,000 knife offences in 2019, a record high. We want to prevent what happened to Will happening to young people across the country. So having established our aims, we quickly recognised that we didn't have the skills to deal directly with the young people we wanted to support. On that basis, we decided we would give grants to charities who delivered services that reflect our criteria. Will loves sports, arts, and education, and we felt that these were 3 excellent mediums or hooks to help engage young people with charities so they could learn the skills they needed to improve their lives. Our criteria for grants giving then stems from recognising how fortunate Will was, wanting troubled young people to be able to fulfil their potential because he was unable to, and prevent what happened to him happening to others. It can be summarised as follows. The William Wates Memorial Trust supports projects that encourage young people experiencing severe disadvantage to keep away from antisocial behaviour and criminal activity, enabling them to fulfil their potential. These objectives for the Trust underpin our passion for what we do. They are in memory of Will, and that means that we leave no stone unturned in ensuring that our goals are met. Our commitment, therefore, is to deliver our objectives in the most effective way we possibly can. In order to achieve that, the family need to be deeply engaged, so my parents and all 4 brothers are trustees of the charity. We also appointed 2 independent trustees, a professional part-time grants manager and a part-time bookkeeper to keep us in check. The family take on the responsibility for championing our charities. This means that the charities who apply successfully to us are vetted, visited, managed and reported on by a member of the family. Since 1998, we have made grants to over 125 charities, totalling £4 million. What makes us different, I think, for a grants-giving charity is that we are so close to our projects. As a result, we have learned a huge amount about what works, so we are able to offer financial support, but also strategic advice and connection to our network. This makes what we do impactful, and charities relate well to our personal engagement. It goes back to family again. We care about the charities we support, and they become part of the William Wates Memorial Trust community, and everyone benefits from that. As you may know, in 2006, we created a cycling event called the Tour de Force, which is now called Le Loop. This is the event that Charles cycled in 2019. Le Loop is our principal fundraiser for the William Wates Memorial Trust and enables us to make grants of between £250,000 and £350,000 a year. Traditionally, the focus for our grants has been London and the South East, reflecting where my family live. However, our cyclists now come from all over the UK, and to recognise that, we've expanded our grants giving UK-wide. As I mentioned at the beginning, this year has been a very difficult year for UK charities, and has been no different for the William Wates Memorial Trust. COVID-19 meant that we were unable to deliver Le Loop in 2020, and this resulted in net income being down £200,000 for the charity. Across the UK, it is clear that COVID-19 is an unfolding humanitarian crisis that will affect all countries. We're all hoping and praying that the vaccine is effective. As with businesses, the impact on each charity, their staff and beneficiaries will vary enormously according to the nature of their work, how they deliver it, the flexibility of their cost base, and the source of their income. It is estimated by Civil Society News that charities lost £4 billion in the 3 months of lockdown from March 20th to June 20th, and that 1 in 10 charities face closure by the end of the year. Despite being £200,000 down on income, the trustees decided to increase our funds available to our WWMT community with a COVID emergency fund of an extra £100,000. A great example of how this has been used comes from the Youth Adventure Trust, a Swindon-based charity who received an unrestricted grant from WWMT. This means that they can use the grant in a way that benefits the charity the most rather than for a specific project. Youth Adventure Trust use outdoor adventure to empower young people to fulfill their potential and lead positive lives in the future. They work with their young people over 3 years to build resilience, develop confidence, and learn skills that will last a lifetime, helping them to face the challenges in their lives. They work with some extremely vulnerable young people who even in normal circumstances face difficulties, challenges, and stresses, and may live in potentially harmful or disadvantaged environments. These young people will be some of the most at risk from the fallout of the current COVID-19 crisis. The additional emotional, practical, and financial pressures on their families means they need support more than ever. So with the support of the William Wates Memorial Trust, Youth Adventure Trust responded quickly to the pandemic and set up a bespoke, virtual one-to-one mentoring scheme. This replaces their usual program of outdoor adventure base camps and activity days by offering regular one-to-one mentoring support to the most vulnerable young people, maintaining contact with all of the young people through text, calls and emails, facilitating online group discussions to nurture friendship groups and offer peer support, and providing regularly updated online resources through their Isolation Motivation webpage. I'm pleased to say that the Youth Adventure Trust were actually able to run activity days over the October half term, but are now back in lockdown, sadly. Because of COVID-19, most charities will be seeing a squeeze on their income. Previous economic and financial market downturns have typically impacted on the level of grants from companies, charitable trusts, and major donors. The fall in value of investments and property also affects the value, if not the number, of legacies. We can expect to see this pattern again in the coming months. What will not have been experienced before, at least in the way it is now, is what is happening to community fundraising. This is a vital source of funding for many charities. It provides unrestricted funding that enables them to operate effectively and also raises public awareness of their work. Self-isolation and lockdown means that volunteers are not able to collect on the streets. More broadly, the cancellation and/or postponements of mass events, such as the London Marathon and individual or small group activities, have brought community fundraising to a juddering halt. And the first lockdown came at the time when many of these activities would otherwise take place. The spring and summer months normally represent their peak period for fundraising. The level of consequent need will vary from charity to charity according to their particular mix of income sources and the impact of COVID-19 on their operating models. What is nonetheless clear is that a great many have needed conscious and thoughtful additional financial support to keep going, and the William Wates Memorial Trust has been able to provide that. We can provide that because we know our charities so well. I'd like to thank you all again very much for your support. As you will have heard, our young people and the charities that support them need every penny they can get, and I hope I've reassured you that the William Wates Memorial Trust is very well set up and positioned to help in a conscientious and effective way. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Rick. That was really really lovely, and I can say that since becoming involved in this it sort of feels like a family, all the cyclists that have been involved in it. There's been a constant chat. Did a big cycling thing on Monday, and there's a whole load of chat going on between the people that I rode with, and it is very inspirational and very motivational. And I've seen it firsthand, the way that charities react, the charities that you support react to your personal involvement and your brother's involvement in the individual ones. When I visited 4 of the charities that you support, including the memorable Wormwood Scrubs visit, and 3 others as well. One of the things I particularly like about what the trust does is that it focuses a lot on it not just being money that goes into a charity and then is lost forever. You focus a lot on the sustainability of the way the money is spent. So, for example, if somebody comes to you as a troubled young person, then as they grow in confidence, they might help to bring in other people, and then they might themselves become mentors, and then eventually they might themselves actually become the trainers of the mentors, and so on. And that when Helen and I went to see the first of the charities that we visited, the Regenerate one in Putney, that particularly struck us, the sustainability of that model. And it's also lovely seeing some of the people from the charities you support actually participating in the Loop cycle ride as well. Do we have any questions for Rick? Please unmute yourself first if you're going to have a question. Okay, Damien, unmute yourself first. Yeah.
Yeah, Rick, I just wondered, I'm sure there have been many success. It was a very interesting talk, by the way, so thank you, and enlightening. I just wondered, and I'm sure there have been many, but I just wondered if there is anything that springs to mind where you see that there's been a fantastic success story as a result of what the foundation's done, particularly perhaps an example of where maybe somebody was sort of almost on a path to going in completely the wrong direction, who's sort of been turned around, if you like, by the work that your foundation has done and or the charities that you support have done. I just wondered if this is maybe a specific example, not names, but that you could sort of share with us.
Yeah, very much so. There was, I remember attending Saracens Rugby Club ran a program where they would, through the hook of rugby, engage pretty tough young kids to come and play rugby, but then learn life skills off the back of it. And it was the charity is called Grit, and it's grit because it's teaching these young kids that they confront them, they really confront them, and they challenge their behavior, and they challenge everything that they're doing throughout the whole process. And it actually strips the kids right back. So they're these tough kids from inner city London or wherever it might be. They're stripped right back until to the point where they have to drop the facade of being this tough young person, and the real them comes out in a group format. And I remember going to watch it and just being, it was so emotional to watch and so hard to watch. And one of these young kids, his self-esteem behind this veneer of toughness and was just so low, and his father had beaten him up as a kid, and his mother very sadly just wasn't around. And for him to be able to drop that facade, and be rebuilded by this team over the course of 2 years was phenomenal. I met him 2 years later, and he was mentoring another young man who was going through the same program, and had just got his first job in a construction business. And I just thought that was never going to happen unless this charity had got hold of him. And I can understand that one struck me so strongly, because I saw him at the beginning and I saw him at the end. And what they do is just so phenomenal, and how his confidence had developed, and how, so, as Charles mentioned earlier, how keen he was to give back. So for us, that was just one of so many success stories. You know, the charities we support are, the frontline people are just brilliant people. So that one stood out for me, but I could probably reel off another 30 for you just off the top of my head.
That's fantastic. Thank you.
Thanks for the question.
How's your dad getting on with his electric bike?
That's a secret, Charles. You got no, he's doing very well with it. I'm thinking of getting one myself. So my father's just turning 80 on November the 16th, and is still riding stages of the Loop, and basically showing up his children, which is really not very professional of him. He's a strong character, and he gets involved, that's for sure.
Yeah, he made quite an impression when he did that in Belgium when we were doing it in 2019.
Yeah, he passes you on hills, and if you don't know he's got an electric bike, that's quite demoralising.
Do we have any other questions?
Yes, if I may, it's Alex here. Rick, you mentioned that case study just now. We happen to know a young 13-year-old who's seriously in trouble and will end up in court.
Right.
You mentioned this charity Grit. Would they be the sort of person who could help him?
Well, I think, Alex, if you don't mind, I mean, the best way of doing this is probably if we can connect afterwards through Charles, and then let's talk about, if you don't mind, talking about, without going into names or whatever, the specifics and geography, and then I can give you a much better understanding of which charity might suit, because obviously they are geographic. Grit is in central London. You know, we've got other ones which are more local to here, more local to Surrey. So let me know if you connect through Charles. I'm very happy to have a chat with you, and we can work something out. And I can certainly point you in the direction of some very good people.
That'd be great. Thank you very much.
It'd be a pleasure.
It's Clive here. Could I ask a question, please, Charles?
Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you. Rick, thank you very much for the talk. It's very interesting. Given the sort of rise in popularity of sort of virtual events like the marathon, London Marathon just put on virtually, and Zwift, etc., have you got plans to perhaps put the Loop onto a virtual format so maybe more of us could take part in it?
Yes, well, actually, you can ask Charles about that, because he's just completed one of the major stages of the Loop on his is that what bike, Charles, or his Zwift bike?
Okay.
Yeah, it was just my my turbo, but 8.5 times up Alpe d'Huez.
Yeah. So that's so the answer, Clive, is that yes, absolutely. We had another chap who has just done a local event actually in Dartmoor, where he did what's called an Everest, and Everest is climbing 8,600 meters in a day, in 24 hours. It was on Dartmoor, and he chose the weather was appalling. But yeah, so there are ways and means of either doing it from home, or it wouldn't. I mean, you know, if you contact Charles and and you wanted to do something like that, we'd really happily facilitate it and get you set up on our Virgin Money page, etc., etc. We'd like to support you. Obviously, it goes without saying.
Oh, great, sounds good. Thank you.
Michael, you're on mute, Michael. You're on mute. Yeah.
Am I unmuted now?
Yeah, go ahead.
Can I ask Rick if
No,
he has taken part?
Hi, Michael.
Morning. Have you taken part in the Loop yourself?
Yeah, good question. I have. So I've actually done. We started it in 2006, and then we did 2010, and then 2012 to now. So every year since 2012. And the most number of stages I've ever done is 17 in one go, in 1 year. So Charles has actually done the whole thing. I've yet to do that, and I'm under enormous pressure, which I'm resisting very strongly, to do the whole thing. But in total, I've done 47 stages of the Tour de France. So I think I've done, in my view, I've done enough, but not, my family don't agree.
Well, you've done far more than I would achieve. So
But I'll keep doing it.
congratulations on that.
So I mean, I really do. I do love it. It's a fantastic event. It's a really not just in terms of the cycling challenge, but also the human side of it. The people I've met and the stories we've got from it really are so very heartwarming. And to do it all in my brother's name is just makes it incredibly special. I find the cycling very hard, if I'm honest, Michael. But I get on with it. I try not to whinge too much. Try and show some leadership.
Well, keep at it. And
It's great. It's great fun. And if anyone, and I will. I'll do it every year. I love it. I love it.
I think Rick's being too modest. He's very strong on the bike.
Thank you.
No, it's not true.
And but I mean, when I first got involved in it, one of the things that was really striking was how many people do it more than once. Because I when I first signed up for this, I thought there's no way that I'm ever going to do this again. You know, it's quite a big deal doing it. But when I went to the first training weekend, I couldn't believe how many people were there from previous years, and they were either going to be doing it again, or they were just supporting people who are thinking of getting into it. And it's this sense of shared purpose and ownership. And you only need to go to see these charities, like the one that I mentioned at Wormwood Scrubs, where one of the charities that they support there is aiming to support young people who are within 6 months of release from prison, and to try and avoid them bouncing straight back in to the criminal world that they came out of. And you can imagine how difficult it is for somebody in that situation to come out. They've got a criminal record, obviously, so unemployable, and all of their social network is based around crime. What's the name of the lady, Rick? Who
Eva Hamilton.
Yeah, a formidable person by any standard. She's and she browbeats her high-flying people in various big firms into offering people with a criminal record a job. Big accounting firms and law firms and those sort of people, and so they have at least then have a chance of employment.
Yeah, I think the thing that cyclists recognise on the loop is that they're climbing their mountain on their bike, and metaphorically, the young people we're supporting are climbing their own mountain. And it's very inspirational when the young people who we're supporting come out to talk to us when you're cycling, out in France and you've had a tough day. It puts it all in perspective, and it's a very rewarding thing. I think people grow into the charitable side of it and recognise that what they're achieving on the bike is phenomenal, but also what they're achieving off it in terms of their fundraising is also very, very impressive and important. And with in our particular case, people tend to raise 50% more than what we ask them to, and I think that's just a reflection of, again, of just how important they begin to feel that the charity is as they get to understand it more, which is a really lovely thing. It's really lovely for us.
One of the Jerry.
Thank you, Charles. Thank you, Rick. Before I ask anything of Rick, I'm just absolutely astonished that you've gone up, Charles, 8.5 times up Alpe d'Huez. I think you're a beast, Charles. That's all I can say.
Oh, that's very nice. So as a cyclist, I take that as a compliment.
Yes. Rick, I was just wondering, obviously, charities by their nature can't hold large reserves, can't hold really large contingencies, as far as I understand. The money that comes in has to be used for the terms of the charity. I was just wondering if you have a view about, given the current climate, how long charities can sustain the work that they're doing now? You know, and when is the point? If this, for example, if COVID goes on for another 9 months, for example, really, what will what do you think the position will be then?
As I briefly touched on, Jerry, and it's so dependent on the charity and their cost base and how they're set up, and and what sort of levels of reserves they're carrying. I mean, the stat was that 1 in 10 charities will go bust by the end of the year. And I mean, you think about the work that these charities do in their local communities and how important they are to actually making our system work. We can't rely on social services, and you need the charities in the communities working at grassroots to make a difference, and nationally as well. So to answer your question more specifically, if you think that the charities lost £4 billion from the period March to June, that is a huge chunk of a £51 billion sector, and it's going to put pressure on. But I would say, again, what's been really impressive is how resilient these charities have been, the good ones and the ones who have sort of dynamic teams and have not only responded in terms of the way they're delivering their services, but also in the way that they've raised money. And there's been an incredible, the British public have been unbelievably generous over the last 6 months to charities, more so than they've ever been. And I think it's because they recognise that charities do a phenomenal job, as I say, in their communities. So one would hope that if this vaccine works and we can get out of lockdown and the charities can get out there, and particularly by next March when the fundraising season starts in earnest, that we will see not too much impact. But I reckon 10% minimum really of the charities will go under, and let's hope it's no more than that, Jerry.
Yeah, I mean, I think with the trust itself as well being a single fundraiser, single fundraising event charity, and the fact that the nature of the Loop is particularly challenging to deliver in a COVID environment. So it's not like the Tour de France, which was able to operate this year. When you've got more than 100 people having to move around France and out on the road for much longer, because obviously we ride much slower than the pros do and all that sort of stuff. It's very challenging for you to be able to create that. So any kind of things to fill that gap must be a really big deal.
Yeah, very much so. The trust is we had an initial endowment which we've been digging into in the last year or so. So I think the William Wates Memorial Trust, if we can do the Loop this year, we'll be in great shape. If we can't, we'll still be okay, but it'll just be we'll have to reduce our fundraising and take some quite serious steps. So God willing, we'll be good for next year.
Okay. So Rick, I'd like to, on behalf of us all, I'd like to say thanks very much indeed for coming along tonight. It's been a real pleasure to have you there. I should have worn my Loop cap, actually. I should have.
Well, thank you very much for having me. It really is we love talking about the trust, and